This is part 3 of the series on Gnosticism for today. In the last video, we talked a little bit about why we're here, according to a Gnostic view. And I mentioned that the universe is a multi-layered place with different levels of powers, both dark and divine. And that we each have a spark of spirit that we need to tend. It's a pity we don't know more about the mental disciplines that Gnostics used. We know they used some, and they also met in study circles, prayer circles. Judging from their stories, including the ones about Jesus where he dances and laughs and uses plant medicines, that was all probably part of their rituals as well. But in any case, the idea is to become more conscious of the spark of the divine. Gnostics talk about this as waking up or becoming sober. And so why does that matter? Keep in mind that Sophia, and there's different versions of this, but Sophia's light is captured down in the dark lower realm where we all live, the realm of emptiness. And so by tending the spark, then at the end of life, and also during visionary ascents into the wholeness, the fullness, we bring the sparks back and in effect reassemble Sophia. And there's Gnostic stories about treasuries of light that hold the sparks. And at the end, when all human Gnostics have returned sparks to the treasury, the state of wholeness is re-achieved and the universe will have served its purpose, and it goes away at that point. So I wanted to say something a little bit in this video too about Sophia herself. There's different versions of what happens to her and how she creates the world or causes it to be created through her offspring, this demiurge who's a chaotic and sometimes evil figure, but not always. And in some of the stories, they talk about this as Sophia's fault or flaw. And in other stories, they talk about this as necessary, as part of the divine plan. And so in one of the Matrix films, there's a Sophia-like character who I think is that way on purpose, the Oracle. And she's having a conversation with Neo, who seems to be patterned after different Gnostic savior figures, whether that's Jesus or Cepheus or other ones. And so they're talking about the architect who built the Matrix, and that would be the demiurge. And at one point, the Oracle says, well, you know, doing it according to a formula, that's his job, right? To balance the equation. And Neo asks her, what's your job? And she says, to unbalance the equation. So, you know, the pleroma with the aeons up there hovering in it, these divine powers, it sounds kind of boring. And then Sophia comes along and stirs the pot a little bit and then creates the world. So maybe that's a good thing. It brings a little chaos where it's needed, and a little creation too. So that's part of the mix as well. And in terms of dealing with these dark powers called archons, which in Gnostic art, like on pendants, they're often represented by Roman military figures. So powers that oppress us are, from a Gnostic perspective, archontic powers. There are ways of dealing with them. Ephesians 6:12 is supposedly written by Paul. Many scholars don't believe he actually wrote it. It sounds more Gnostic, actually. And so in that passage, Paul says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. This is Gnostic language for archons. Against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So the Gnostics were not revolutionaries, they were more evolutionaries, according to what we can tell from their stories and letters. And they wrote a lot about seeing through archontic manifestations, for want of a better word. When someone gets possessed by an archon, or an entire organization does, Christianity succumbed early, according to a Gnostic understanding. The archons took it over right away. And Peter in Gnostic Gospels is often an archontic figure. And so one way of dealing with that is to start by seeing through it, by understanding what you're actually looking at. So it's not to go up against people, but against the dark forces. Today we would say the dark psychology that rules these people. So you can find out more about archons throughout the Gnostic texts, but in particular the secret book of John. It's also called the Apocryphon of John, the older translation. And there's another text called On the Nature of the Rulers. The older term is the Hypostasis of the Archons. So those are places you can learn more about them. But in the Christian Gnostic texts, when Jesus talks about this, in Gnosticism, he's more a wisdom figure in many ways. And so the advice he gives his followers is pass by them. Don't let them possess you internally. Understand what they're trying to do to you and the rage and sorrow and grief and other states, jealousy that they invoke in you, and pass by. And so he actually says in the Gospel of Thomas and other places, be passers-by.